The sun had barely climbed over the pine trees when Lynn pulled into the gravel parking lot of Blue Ridge Shooting Range. Her 15-year-old sedan looked out of place among the shiny trucks and SUVs. She checked her watch, 20 minutes early. That was good. She needed time to calm the flutter in her stomach. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, gripping the steering wheel. At 42, Lynn had never held a real gun before. The small-town librarian had spent decades organizing books, not ammunition. But after 3 break-ins on her street in the past month, something had to change. Her neighbor, Mrs. Winters, had her purse stolen right from her kitchen counter while she was gardening out back. The police said they were investigating, but Lynn knew what that meant in a town with only 4 officers. Lynn grabbed her notebook and the small bag containing the safety glasses she'd bought yesterday at the hardware store. The morning air felt crisp against her face as she walked toward the low brick building. A sign with peeling paint read, "Established 1976" above the door. Inside, the scent of coffee and gun oil filled the air. About 15 people, mostly men, stood around in small groups. Their laughter quieted as Lynn stepped through the door. A few glanced her way, then returned to their conversations. One man in the corner, tall with a gray beard, stared a bit longer than the rest, his eyes narrowing slightly before he turned back to his friends. Lynn approached the front desk, where a stocky man with a military-style haircut was shuffling papers. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm here for the beginner's marksmanship class." The man looked up, his expression unchanging. "You're in the right place. I'm Dale. I run this show." He pushed a clipboard toward her. "Fill these out. Safety forms. Read them before you sign." Lynn nodded and took the clipboard to an empty chair in the corner. She could feel eyes on her as she walked. The forms were full of warnings and rules. No, pointing weapons at others. Always assume a gun is loaded, keep finger off trigger until ready to fire. She signed her name at the bottom of each page. When she returned the clipboard, Dale barely looked at it. "First-time shooter?" "Yes," Lynn admitted. Dale nodded. "We get a few every month, mostly after something happens in town." His tone wasn't unkind, just matter-of-fact. "You carrying today or just looking to learn?" "Just learning for now," Lynn said. "I don't own a gun yet." "Smart. Learn first, buy later." Dale handed her a laminated card with her name on it. "We start in 5 minutes. Hang this on your shirt. You'll need to rent a firearm for practice. $20 includes basic ammo for today." As Lynn paid the rental fee, the door swung open and a man walked in wearing a tan vest covered in pockets. He moved with the confidence of someone who belonged, and the room's energy shifted immediately. Several people straightened their posture. Others called out greetings. "Morning, Vance." "Hey, saw your targets from last week. Impressive as always." "Gonna break your own record today?" The newcomer, Vance, smiled and nodded to each person. His eyes landed on Lynn for just a moment, registering her presence before moving on without comment. He walked to a display case where several trophies and framed targets hung on the wall. A photo showed Vance holding an enormous trophy, "Regional Champion," printed across the bottom. Dale clapped his hands loudly. "All right, folks, let's get started. Veterans, you know where to go. First-timers and beginners, stay with me." Most of the group filed through a door toward what Lynn assumed was the shooting range. Only 4 people remained. Lynn, a nervous-looking young man probably in his 20s, an older woman with silver hair, and a middle-aged man in an expensive-looking jacket. "Right," Dale said, looking at the small group. "Today we start with the basics. Safety, stance, grip, and if we get that far you might fire a few rounds. But don't count on it." He pointed to a side room. "In there first for the safety video." The safety video was clearly from the 1990s, with dated graphics and a narrator who spoke in a monotone. Lynn took careful notes anyway, writing down terms she didn't understand to look up later. After the video, Dale led them to a classroom with 4 tables set up in a row. "Pick a spot," he said, gesturing to the tables. Each had a rubber mat and an unloaded handgun placed carefully in the center. Lynn chose the table farthest from the door. The older woman sat next to her, offering a small smile, the first friendly gesture Lynn had received since arriving. First, time 2? The woman asked quietly. Lynn nodded. Never thought I'd be doing this. Me neither, the woman said. I'm June. My daughter made me come after someone tried to break into my house last month. I'm Lynn. Same reason, basically. Dale interrupted their conversation. Eyes up front. No gun touches anything but that mat until I say so. Clear? Everyone nodded. Good. Now, what we have here is a standard 9mm pistol. Entry level, reliable, common. Before we talk about firing, we're going to spend 30 minutes on how to hold it without shooting yourself or anyone else. Dale demonstrated the proper grip, how to check if a gun was loaded, and the correct stance. He moved from table to table, adjusting hands and postures. When he reached Lynn, he frowned slightly. Loosen up, he said, tapping her rigid shoulders. You're not holding a snake. Lynn tried to relax, but her hands felt clumsy around the pistol, even unloaded. Turn your left foot out more, Dale instructed. Weight balanced. He moved her elbow a fraction of an inch. Better. After 30 minutes of stance practice without ever firing, Dale announced they would move to the actual range. Remember, one shot at a time. Focus on form, not hitting bullseyes. The indoor range was louder than Lynn expected, even with ear protection. The veterans from earlier were at the far end, firing rapidly at targets. Vance stood in the center, lane, his shots forming a tight cluster in the center of his target. Dale set up the beginners at the lanes farthest from the experienced shooters. 20 feet to start. Load 1 round only. Lynn's hands trembled slightly as she loaded a single bullet, following Dale's step-by-step instructions. She raised the pistol, trying to remember everything. Stance, grip, sight alignment, breathing. Her first shot went wide, missing the paper target entirely. You jerked the trigger, Dale said, not unkindly. Common mistake, try again, squeeze, don't pull. Her second attempt hit the outer edge of the target. Not great, but at least on paper. Keep working on it, Dale said before moving to help June. After an hour on the range, Lynn's arms ached from holding the pistol. She'd managed to hit the middle rings a few times, but nothing close to the center. Meanwhile, at the other end of the range, Vance and his friends were shooting complex patterns, changing magazines rapidly, and generally putting on a show of skill. During a break, Lynn overheard 2 men talking as they refilled their water bottles. Who's the new lady in the blue shirt? One asked. No idea. Another scared citizen after the break-ins, probably, the other replied. Dale's got his work cut out for him. Did you see her first shots? Lynn pretended not to hear, focusing on adjusting her safety glasses. But the words stung more than she wanted to admit. When the class ended, Dale gathered everyone for final remarks. Practice what you learned. Think about what type of firearm might suit your needs. We're here Saturdays and Wednesdays. As people began to leave, Lynn noticed Vance studying the paper targets the beginners had used. He picked up Lynn's, looking at the scattered holes across the paper. First day? He asked when he realized she was watching him. Lynn nodded. That obvious, huh? Everyone starts somewhere. He shrugged. But some people have natural talent. Others. He let the sentence hang unfinished, putting her target back on the pile. Lynn drove home with mixed feelings. Part of her wanted to never return to the range, to forget the embarrassment of those scattered shots and dismissive looks. But another part, a stubborn, determined part she hadn't realized was so strong, was already thinking about coming back. Next Saturday, she stopped at the bookstore on her way home and bought The Beginner's Guide to Marksmanship and Mental Focus in Sport Shooting. That night, Lynn practiced her stance in front of her bedroom mirror, holding a TV remote instead of a gun, remembering Dale's instructions about balance and posture. I'll get better, she promised herself. Just wait and see. Lynn arrived at the Blue Ridge shooting range the following Saturday 30 minutes early. The parking lot was nearly empty except for Dale's truck and a few other vehicles. She'd spent the whole week practicing her stance in her living room, reading the marksmanship books until late at night, and watching online videos about proper breathing techniques. Her coffee table was covered with sticky notes filled with tips she'd written down. This time she walked through the front door with slightly more confidence. The smell of gun oil and coffee was becoming familiar. Dale looked up from behind the counter, surprise briefly crossing his face. "Didn't expect to see you back," he said, sorting through a box of ammunition. "I'm not giving up that easily," Lynn replied, signing her name on the attendance sheet. Dale shrugged. "Most people who shoot like you did the first day don't come back." Lynn felt her face grow warm but kept her expression neutral. "I've been practicing at home, without the actual gun, of course. Dry firing helps," Dale nodded. "Same rental as last time?" After paying the rental fee, Lynn headed toward the classroom area. She was arranging her notebook and pens when June walked in, her silver hair tied back in a neat bun. "You came back too," June smiled warmly. "I wasn't sure if I'd see anyone from last week." They chatted while waiting for the class to begin. June had also been practicing at home and had convinced her grandson to help her research different types of handguns online. "My daughter thinks I've lost my mind," June laughed. "But after that break-in attempt, I'd rather be prepared." The classroom gradually filled with about a dozen people. Lynn recognized a few faces from the previous week, including Vance, who nodded briefly in her direction before joining a group of experienced shooters near the front. The young man from last week's beginner group didn't return, but the middle-aged man in the expensive jacket was back, looking more comfortable this time. Dale started the class with a review of safety procedures, then announced, "Today we're moving beyond basics. Those who've been here a while, you know the drill. Beginners will work on improving accuracy and introducing defensive stance." The class split into groups. Lynn found herself paired with June and the man in the expensive jacket, whose name turned out to be Raymond. Dale assigned them basic drills, then moved to spend more time with the advanced group. "He always does this," Raymond muttered, loading his rental pistol carefully. "Spends 10 minutes with us, then an hour with Vance and his buddies." Lynn had noticed the same thing. "I guess the experienced shooters need advanced coaching." "No," Raymond said firmly. "Vance could teach this class himself. Dale just prefers hanging out with the people who make him look good." They practiced for an hour, with Dale occasionally walking over to offer brief corrections. Lynn's shots were consistently hitting the target now, though still scattered across the outer rings. June was struggling more, her hands shaking slightly each time before firing. During a break, Lynn watched Vance demonstrating a rapid-fire technique to a small audience. His movements were fluid, almost graceful. 6 shots, 6 bullseyes, in less than 3 seconds. "Impressive, isn't he?" A quiet voice spoke beside Lynn. She turned to find an elderly man she hadn't noticed before. He stood slightly apart from the others, leaning on a wooden cane. His weathered face held kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Very," Lynn admitted. "I'll never shoot like that." The old man chuckled. "Nobody starts shooting like that, not even Vance." He extended his hand. "I'm Howard. I used to run this place before Dale took over." "Lynn," she replied, shaking his hand. "You still shoot?" "These days I mostly watch." Howard tapped his cane against his leg. "Bad knee. But I drop by to keep an eye on things." He nodded toward the range where people were returning to their positions. "Don't let Dale's teaching style discourage you. He focuses on the naturals, ignores the rest. Been that way since he was a hotshot himself." After the break, Lynn returned to her lane with Howard's words in her mind. She tried to focus on her own improvement rather than comparing herself to Vance or the others. Her shots gradually became more consistent, though still nowhere near the bullseye. Dale walked by, glancing at her target. "Better than last week," he said, "but you're still anticipating the recoil. Makes you push the barrel down right before firing." "How do I stop doing that?" Lynn asked. Dale looked at his watch. "Try focusing on your follow-through. Squeeze. Don't jerk." He was already turning away when he added, "And relax your shoulders. You look like you're bracing for a car crash." Left with these vague instructions, Lynn tried adjusting her stance. After several more frustrating attempts, she noticed Howard watching from behind the shooting line. When she paused to reload, he approached. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her stance. Lynn nodded, grateful for the attention. Dale's right about the anticipation, but his fix is wrong for you, Howard said quietly. Your body frame is different. Try this. He demonstrated a slightly modified stance. Weight centered, not forward. And when you raise the pistol, bring it up in one smooth motion to eye level. Don't adjust after. Lynn tried his suggestion. The pistol felt more stable in her hands, and her next shot landed closer to the center than any previous attempt. Better. Howard nodded. Now remember that feeling. Muscle memory is key. For the rest of the session, Lynn practiced the technique Howard had shown her. Her groupings tightened noticeably, though still not reaching the innermost rings consistently. June noticed the improvement and asked for advice, which Lynn gladly shared. As they were packing up, Vance walked by their lane, glancing at their targets. Getting better, he commented, his tone suggesting mild surprise. Thanks, Lynn replied. Keep at it. In a year or two, you might hit center ring occasionally. His smile didn't reach his eyes as he walked away. Raymond rolled his eyes. Don't mind him. He treats everyone like they're beneath him. After class, Lynn stayed behind to clean her rental gun properly. Howard approached as she was finishing. You have good instincts, he said. But you're fighting Dale's instructions because they're not right for your build or style. What do you mean? Lynn asked. Dale teaches everyone to shoot like he does, like most military men do. Wide stance, aggressive posture. Works for him, works for Vance, doesn't work for everyone. Howard leaned on his cane. Different bodies need different approaches. Lynn thought about this. Is there a book or something I could study? Howard smiled. Better. Come 30 minutes early next week. I'll show you some techniques that might work better for you. During the following week, Lynn continued her home practice with renewed purpose. She incorporated Howard's suggestions into her dry-firing routine. She also found herself paying more attention to her breathing throughout the day. At the library while shelving books, at home cooking dinner, even while waiting in line at the grocery store. Conscious breathing was apparently key to steady shooting. At work, her colleague noticed the change. You seem different lately, she commented as they sorted returned books. More focused. Lynn smiled. I've picked up a new hobby. It's teaching me patience. Good for you. What is it, painting, yoga? Lynn hesitated, then said, Marksmanship, actually. I'm learning to shoot. Her colleague's eyebrows shot up. You, with a gun, why? The break-ins, Lynn explained, and because I wanted to try something completely different. She shelved a mystery novel. It's harder than it looks, and humbling. I'm terrible at it. But you're enjoying it? Lynn considered this. I'm enjoying the challenge, and proving to myself that I can do something that scares me. Saturday couldn't come quickly enough. Lynn arrived 40 minutes early, heart beating faster when she saw Howard's old blue pickup already in the parking lot. Inside, he was waiting with 2 cups of coffee. Ready for your real lesson? He asked, handing her a cup. Lynn nodded, suddenly, nervous but determined. Ready? Howard led her to an empty lane at the far end of the range. Today, he said, we forget everything Dale taught you. We start fresh with what works for your body, your eyes, your natural balance. As the range slowly filled with other shooters, Lynn focused entirely on Howard's quiet instructions, unaware of Vance and Dale watching curiously from across the room, wondering what the old man was teaching the librarian who everyone had written off as hopeless. The third Saturday dawned cool and misty. Lynn's windshield wipers swept away light drizzle as she drove to Blue Ridge shooting range. Her mind replayed Howard's lessons from the previous week, the small adjustments that had made such a difference in her shooting. It's like dancing, Howard had told her. Your body knows the right way to move if you listen to it. Most people fight their natural balance because they're copying someone else's form. The range was unusually busy when Lynn arrived. A sign near the entrance explained why. Monthly competition. Sign up today. Open to all skill levels. People clustered around the front desk where Dale was collecting entry forms and fees. Howard waved Lynn over to a quiet corner. Morning. Quite a crowd today. What's the competition? Lynn asked, setting down her bag. Dale runs it the last Saturday each month. Different challenges at various distances, winner gets free range time. Howard leaned on his cane. Good practice, if nothing else. I'm not ready for that, Lynn said quickly. Howard's eyes crinkled at the corners. Not asking you to enter, but watching might be educational. They found a spot near the back of the range where they could observe without being in the way. Vance arrived minutes later, greeted by enthusiastic handshakes and backslaps. He carried a sleek black case that he handled with reverent care. Inside was a customized pistol that drew admiring glances. His competition piece, Howard explained. Modified trigger, custom grip, special sights. Legal for the open division. Dale gathered everyone around to explain the day's competition format. 3 rounds of increasing difficulty. Final round is worth double points, he announced. Single shot at 25 yards on a half-size target. Lynn watched the contestants prepare. Some did stretching exercises, others checked and rechecked their weapons. Vance stood slightly apart, eyes closed in concentration. The air hummed with competitive energy. Can we still practice while they compete? Lynn asked. Far end of the range is open for non-competitors, Howard confirmed. Let's work on what we started last week. While the competition began with much fanfare, Lynn focused on Howard's quiet instructions. He'd brought a small notebook where he'd sketched diagrams of proper alignment. Today we refine your trigger control, he said. The finger position we found last time was good. Now we work on pressure, how you squeeze rather than when. Lynn practiced dry firing, focusing on the smooth, straight-back motion Howard demonstrated. When she finally loaded live ammunition, her shots landed noticeably closer to center than before. Much better, Howard nodded. You're not fighting yourself anymore. Midway through the morning, June appeared at their lane, her silver hair tucked under a Blue Ridge Range cap. Lynn, I've been looking for you. She glanced at Howard with curiosity. June, this is Howard. He's been helping me improve my technique. I can see that, June said, eyeing Lynn's target with its tighter grouping. You've gotten much better. A burst of applause from the competition area interrupted them. Vance had just completed the second round with near-perfect scores. That man is something else, June remarked. Raymond says he's been state champion 3 years running. Howard made a non-committal sound. Technical skill isn't everything in shooting. June stayed to watch Lynn practice for a while, eventually asking, Would you mind if I tried your technique? Dale's instructions aren't working well for me. For the next hour, Lynn found herself in the unexpected position of helping June adjust her stance and grip based on what Howard had taught her. The older woman's improvement was immediate and gratifying. I've wasted 2 weeks trying to stand like Dale showed us. June sighed, looking at her better grouping. This feels so much more natural. During lunch break, Lynn and June sat at a picnic table under an awning outside. The rain had stopped, leaving everything damp and fresh smelling. Howard had gone to speak with an old friend, promising to return later. How did you find Howard? June asked between bites of her sandwich. He found me, actually, Lynn explained. Noticed I was struggling with Dale's teaching style. Lucky for you and for me. June took a sip of her tea. The men around here aren't exactly welcoming to women who can't already shoot like Annie Oakley. Lynn nodded in agreement. I noticed. It's not just here, June continued. My late husband was the same way with golf. Couldn't understand why. I didn't swing correctly. Turned out his way wasn't right for someone with my height and arm length. Their conversation was interrupted when Raymond approached, looking agitated. Have you seen the competition brackets? He asked, without preamble. Dale put all the beginners against each other and all his buddies in the easy bracket. Is that unusual? Lynn asked. It's how he makes sure Vance and his friends make it to the finals, Raymond explained. Been doing it for months. Nobody calls him out because they don't want to be banned from the range. June frowned. Doesn't seem very sportsmanlike. It's not, Raymond agreed. But what can you do? Dale owns the place. He nodded toward their targets visible through the door. You, too, are improving, by the way. Especially you, Lynn. What's your secret? Lynn hesitated. Just practice and some advice from Howard. The old guy with the cane? Interesting. Raymond checked his watch. Break's almost over. They're starting the semifinal round soon if you want to watch. Lynn and June returned to the range where the competition had drawn a sizable crowd. Vance was preparing for his semifinal round, methodically checking his pistol while Dale announced the scoring to spectators. Final round will be after this, Dale explained. Single shot at 25 yards on a reduced target, double points, so it can change everything. Lynn noticed Howard standing quietly at the back of the room watching with sharp eyes. She joined him as Vance stepped up to fire. He's very good, she acknowledged as Vance hit the center ring repeatedly. Yes, Howard agreed. But he's also never been seriously challenged here. Makes a person sloppy over time. After the semifinals, which Vance won handily, Lynn returned to her lane to practice more. The competition had thinned the regular crowd, giving her space to concentrate. Howard watched her form carefully, occasionally suggesting tiny adjustments. You're getting consistent, he noted. Time to work on reading your body's signals between heartbeats. Between heartbeats? The best shots happen in the pause between your heart's rhythm, Howard explained, placing his hand over his chest. There's a natural moment of stillness. Learn to recognize it. This concept fascinated Lynn. She spent the next hour focusing inward, trying to feel the rhythm Howard described. When she synced her breathing and trigger squeeze to this pattern, her shots landed closer to center than ever before. As the afternoon wore on, the competition reached its final round. 8 shooters remained, including Vance, who was the clear favorite. The atmosphere grew tense as Dale explained the final challenge. 1 shot, 25 yards, half-size target. Highest score wins. In case of a tie, we go to previous round's total score, Dale announced. People gathered to watch. Even the non-competitors stopped practicing to observe the finals. Lynn and June found spots near the back where they could see the targets clearly. Look at those tiny targets, June whispered, like trying to hit a quarter from across a basketball court. Howard appeared beside them. The real challenge isn't the size, he said quietly. It's managing the pressure. 1 shot, all eyes on you. One by one, the finalists took their positions. Most hit the outer rings, scoring 6s and 7s out of 10 possible points. A few missed completely, the pressure proving too much. Vance was scheduled to go last as the top scorer from previous rounds. When the 7th shooter finished with a respectable 8, Vance stepped up confidently. The room fell silent. He took his stance, feet perfectly positioned, arms extended, in textbook form. After a controlled breath, he fired. His shot hit just off center. A 9. Appreciative murmurs rippled through the crowd. Dale was already reaching for the winner's certificate when Howard's voice cut through the noise. Hold on, Dale. Aren't you forgetting something? Dale turned with a frown. What's that? The sign-up sheet said, open to all skill levels. Lynn hasn't had her turn. All eyes shifted to Lynn, who felt her face grow hot. I'm not in the competition, she said quickly. Actually, Howard said, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. I entered you this morning. Paid the fee and everything. You're competitor number 16. Dale's expression darkened. Howard, this isn't... Check your list, Howard interrupted calmly. Rules are rules, Dale. Everyone who entered gets their shot. Dale reluctantly checked his clipboard. Fine. Lane 3, whenever you're ready. The crowd parted as Lynn moved forward. Some people smirking, others looking embarrassed for her. Vance leaned against the wall, arms crossed, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Howard handed Lynn a pistol. Not her usual rental, but his own personal firearm. Remember everything we've practiced, he said softly. 1 shot between heartbeats. Lynn took position at lane 3, feeling every eye in the room on her back. The tiny target seemed impossibly far away. She closed her eyes briefly, centering herself the way Howard had taught her, finding the quiet place within. When she opened her eyes, she wasn't thinking about Vance or Dale or the competition. She was only aware of her breath, her heartbeat, and the perfect moment between them. The range fell silent as Lynn raised Howard's pistol. It felt different from her rental, slightly heavier, the grip worn smooth from years of use. She could sense people watching, could almost feel their doubt, like a physical weight against her back. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered something that made others chuckle softly. Lynn pushed it all away, focusing only on Howard's teachings. Find your natural stance. His voice echoed in her memory. Your body knows. She adjusted her feet slightly, not in the rigid position Dale had taught, but in a way that felt balanced and stable. Her shoulders relaxed, her breathing slowed. The pistol came up in one fluid motion, aligning naturally with her eye. 25 yards away, the half-sized target seemed impossibly small. 10 rings, with the innermost circle barely larger than a dime from this distance. Vance had hit a 9, just off perfect center. Nobody expected the librarian to come close. Lynn felt her heartbeat strong and steady. 1 beat, 2 beats. She began to sense the pattern Howard had described, the natural pause between pulses. Time seemed to slow down. Inhale. Exhale. Halfway. Hold. In that perfect moment of stillness between heartbeats, Lynn squeezed the trigger with smooth, even pressure. The sound of the shot echoed through the range. Lynn maintained her position, following through as Howard had taught her, before slowly lowering the pistol. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then Dale lifted his binoculars to check the distant target. His silence told the story before he spoke. Center ring, he announced, voice flat with disbelief. Perfect 10. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Vance pushed off from the wall where he'd been leaning, his relaxed posture suddenly tense. He stepped forward to look through his own set of binoculars. Let me see that, he demanded, focusing on Lynn's target. June rushed to Lynn's side. You did it. You actually did it. Lynn stood motionless, as surprised as everyone else. She looked toward Howard, who nodded once, his eyes crinkling with quiet pride. Dale cleared his throat. Final scores. Vance with a 9, Lynn with a 10. Lynn wins the round, but overall points from previous rounds put Vance in first place. Howard stepped forward. Check the rules, Dale. The final round is worth double points. That makes Lynn's score 20 points for this round alone. Dale shuffled through his papers, frowning. That's technically correct. So who wins the overall competition? Raymond called out from the back of the room. Dale calculated reluctantly. With double points in the final round, Lynn wins by 1 point. The room went completely silent again. Then June started clapping, followed by Raymond, then a few others. Soon half the room was applauding while the other half, mostly Vance's friends, stood with arms crossed or whispered among themselves. Vance walked over to Lynn, his expression unreadable. For a moment, she thought he might challenge the results, or accuse her of cheating somehow. Instead, he extended his hand. Lucky shot, he said, not quite managing to keep the edge from his voice. Lynn shook his hand. Maybe, or maybe not. I'd like to see you do it again, he replied. Is that a challenge? Howard asked, stepping up beside Lynn. Vance hesitated, then nodded. Same distance, 3 shots each, highest total wins. And what are the stakes? Howard asked. If she wins, I'll personally cover her range fees for a year, Vance offered. If I win, she admits her first shot was beginner's luck. Lynn looked at Howard, who raised an eyebrow in question. She considered declining, quitting while ahead seemed smarter. But something in Vance's dismissive tone sparked a quiet determination. Deal, she said. Dale, seeing the opportunity for more drama, quickly set up the impromptu contest. 3 shots each at 25 yards, standard target. Vance shoots first as the range champion. The crowd rearranged themselves, the energy in the room electric with anticipation. June squeezed Lynn's arm. Are you sure about this? That was an amazing shot, but 3 in a row. Lynn wasn't sure at all, but she smiled anyway. Howard didn't. Just teach me how to make one good shot. Vance took his position, his movements precise and confident. The room hushed as he raised his custom pistol. 3 shots rang out in measured succession. Dale checked the target through binoculars. 9, 10, 9, total of 28 out of 30 possible points. Vance stepped back, a satisfied smile on his face. Your turn, librarian. Lynn moved to the firing line, aware of every eye watching her. She felt a flutter of doubt. Her perfect shot could have been luck, the shooting equivalent of a hole-in-one in golf. Could she really match Vance's consistency? Howard came up beside her. Remember what we practiced, he said quietly. Not just the physical form, but the mental focus. Each shot is its own moment. Lynn nodded and raised the pistol. She found her balanced stance, aligned her sights, and settled into her breathing. Rhythm. The first shot felt good leaving the barrel. 9, Dale announced after checking. Not perfect, but solid. Lynn refocused for her second shot, finding that space between heartbeats. She squeezed the trigger. 10, someone called out before. Dale could announce it. The room grew tense. Lynn was at 19 points, needing a 10 to beat Vance. She took an extra moment before the third shot, closing her eyes briefly to center herself. When she opened them, the world narrowed to just her, the pistol, and the distant target. Her final shot broke the silence. Dale raised his binoculars slowly. 10. That's 29 total. Lynn wins. This time the applause was immediate and widespread. Even some of Vance's friends joined in, impressed despite themselves. Raymond whooped loudly from the back. June hugged Lynn, who stood in shock at what she'd accomplished. Vance stared at the distant target, then at Lynn, reassessing everything he thought he knew about the quiet librarian. Without a word, he walked to the front desk, pulled out his wallet, and paid for a full year's membership in Lynn's name. As the excitement settled, people gathered around Lynn to congratulate her or ask questions. Where did she learn to shoot like that? How long had she been practicing secretly? Was she some kind of competitive shooter from another state? 3 weeks, she answered honestly. I started 3 weeks ago, right here. Many didn't believe her until June and Raymond confirmed it. The crowd's amazement only grew. Beginner's luck times 6? Someone asked Vance, who was standing at the edge of the group. No, Vance replied quietly. Not luck. Something else. He looked at Howard. You taught her differently than Dale teaches us. Howard shrugged. I taught her to work with her natural abilities, not against them. Dale, who had been conspicuously quiet, finally approached. Where did you learn to shoot like that, Lynn? Really? Howard showed me that the techniques you were teaching didn't work for my body type or eye dominance, Lynn explained. He helped me find my own form. Howard, Dale looked confused. What does a range owner from 40 years ago know about modern shooting techniques? Howard smiled faintly. Range owner is just one line on my resume, Dale. Raymond joined the conversation. You don't know who he is, do you? Howard Parker was an Olympic marksman. Silver medal 1984. Dale's eyes widened. The Howard Parker? Howard tapped his cane modestly against the floor. Ancient history. As the crowd dispersed and the regular Saturday session resumed, Lynn helped Howard pack up his pistol. Why didn't you tell me you were an Olympic shooter? She asked. Would it have mattered? Howard replied. Medals don't make the teaching any more valid. Results do. Lynn thought about this. Thank you. Not just for the techniques, but for believing I could do it when no one else did, including me. You did the work, Howard said, and you had the right mindset, humble enough to learn, determined enough to practice. What happens now? Lynn asked, looking around the range where people were casting curious glances her way. Now, Howard said with a small smile, you decide what you want to do with this skill. Protection was your original goal, I believe. Lynn nodded. Yes, but now you've discovered you have a talent. Howard finished for her. Happens that way sometimes. We try something for one reason and discover an unexpected gift. Dale approached them again, his previous dismissive attitude replaced with awkward deference. Howard, I was thinking, would you be interested in teaching some classes here? Special techniques for different body types? We could work out a fee arrangement. Not interested in teaching groups, Howard replied. I'm mostly retired. Dale looked disappointed, then turned to Lynn. The competition prize includes more than just free range time. There's also an invitation to join our advanced class on Thursdays. Lynn considered this. 3 weeks ago, she would have laughed at the idea of being in an advanced shooting class. I'd like that, she decided, but I'll still need Howard's coaching, if he's willing. Howard nodded. I could be persuaded to continue with one student. As they were leaving, June caught up with Lynn in the parking lot. You've inspired me, she said. If you can do what you did today after just 3 weeks, imagine what's possible with continued practice. Lynn smiled. It's not just practice. It's having the right teacher who sees your potential. She glanced back at the range where, through the window, she could see Vance deep in conversation with Howard, gesturing toward the targets. Even the champion had realized he might have something to learn. Lynn drove home with a sense of quiet achievement. The librarian who couldn't hit the broadside of a barn 3 weeks ago had just outshot the range champion. But more importantly, she had discovered something valuable about herself, that with the right guidance and persistent effort, she was capable of far more than anyone had given her credit for, including herself. 3 months passed since Lynn's unexpected victory at Blue Ridge shooting range. Spring had given way to summer, bringing humid mornings and afternoon thunderstorms. The library where Lynn worked had become busier with children out of school, leaving her less time to practice during the week. Still, every Saturday morning found her at the range with Howard, refining her skills and deepening her understanding of marksmanship. Today was different, though. Today marked the quarterly regional competition, Lynn's first official event beyond the walls of Blue Ridge. Howard had suggested she enter, believing she was ready to test herself against shooters from across the state. You don't have to win, he'd told her. Just go experience a bigger competition. See how you handle the pressure. Lynn parked outside the large event center that hosted the competition. Unlike Blue Ridge's modest facility, this place looked serious, a purpose-built range with 20 lanes, professional lighting, and electronic scoring systems. Competitors milled about in matching team shirts, equipment bags slung over their shoulders. Many wore specialized shooting glasses and custom holsters. Lynn felt underdressed in her jeans and Blue Ridge t-shirt, carrying only a small bag with her safety equipment and the pistol she'd recently purchased, a mid-range model Howard had helped her select. Nothing fancy compared to what others carried. You made it, Howard called, waving from near the entrance. Despite the summer heat, he wore his usual button-up shirt with sleeves rolled to the elbows. His cane tapped against the concrete as he approached. Almost turned around twice, Lynn admitted. This place is intimidating. Just a bigger room with the same basic principles, Howard assured her. Remember, you're here to learn, not necessarily to win. Inside, the air conditioning was a welcome relief. Lynn registered at the front desk, receiving a competitor number and lane assignment. The woman handling registration raised an eyebrow when Lynn listed her experience as 3 months. First-timer category is full, she said. I'll have to put you in intermediate. That's fine, Lynn replied, though her stomach tightened with nerves. Howard guided her through the pre-competition routine, finding her assigned lane, setting up her equipment, reviewing the rules. They watched other competitors warming up, many going through elaborate preparation rituals. So many gadgets, Lynn observed, noting the specialized gloves, electronic timers, and custom grips. I feel underprepared. Tools don't make the shooter, Howard reminded her. Remember Blue Ridge? Vance had all the gear, but it came down to fundamentals in the end. Speaking of Vance, Lynn spotted him across the room with several other Blue Ridge regulars. He caught her eye and nodded in recognition, not quite friendly but respectful. Their relationship had evolved into something like a truce since her victory. He'd even asked her for advice once, a moment that had shocked them both. Dale was there too, serving as an official timer for the event. He'd changed his approach at Blue Ridge after Lynn's success, becoming more attentive to all students regardless of their initial ability. He'd even asked Howard to give a special workshop, which the older man had reluctantly agreed to after much persuasion. "Lynn," June called, making her way through the crowd. "I came to cheer you on." The silver-haired woman had become a good friend over the past months. Though she hadn't advanced as quickly as Lynn, her shooting had improved steadily under Howard's occasional guidance. "I'm so nervous," Lynn confessed. "There are people here who've been shooting for decades." "And you beat the best shooter at Blue Ridge after 3 weeks, June reminded her. "Don't count yourself out." The competition began with an announcement over the loudspeaker. The format was more complex than Blue Ridge's simple contest. Multiple rounds with different challenges, including timed shooting, various distances, and even moving targets in the advanced divisions. Lynn's intermediate group would shoot in the second session, giving her time to observe the first competitors. She watched carefully, noting how the more experienced shooters handled the pressure and pace. "What do you see?" Howard asked, standing beside her. "Many of them rush when the timer starts," Lynn observed. "They abandon their form in favor of speed." Howard nodded approvingly. "Good observation. Remember that when it's your turn." An hour later, Lynn's group was called to their lanes. 25 competitors, most looking far more experienced than her. As they prepared, Lynn could hear snippets of conversation. Shooting for 8 years competitively. Modified the trigger pull to 3 pounds. Qualified for nationals last year. Lynn took a deep breath, fighting the urge to compare herself to others. Howard had warned her about this. "The only person you're competing against is yourself," he'd said. "Focus on doing your best, not on beating someone else." The first round was straightforward. 10 shots at 15 yards scored for accuracy. Lynn settled into her stance, finding her rhythm despite the unfamiliar surroundings and the audience behind the shooters. When she finished, her grouping was tight, not perfect, but respectable. The second round introduced time pressure. 20 seconds to fire 5 accurate shots. Many competitors rushed, sacrificing precision for speed. Lynn maintained her methodical approach, finishing with 2 seconds to spare and all 5 shots in the inner rings. By the third round, rapid target transitions between 3 separate targets, Lynn found herself near the top of the leaderboard. A small crowd had gathered behind her lane, curious about the unknown shooter performing so well in her first competition. "Where did she train?" "I haven't seen her at regionals before." "Blue Ridge? Isn't that the small place out by the county line?" The final round was the most challenging. A single shot at 30 yards with a 30-second time limit. Unlike the rush of earlier rounds, this one tested patience and precision. Many shooters fired too quickly, missing optimal points. When Lynn's turn came, she blocked out everything. The whispers, the electronic timer counting down, even Howard and June watching from the sidelines. She found her balanced stance, controlled her breathing, and waited for that perfect moment between heartbeats that Howard had taught her to recognize. With 12 seconds left on the clock, she took her shot. A perfect 10. The final scores put Lynn in third place overall in the intermediate division, an extraordinary result for someone with just 3 months of experience. As medals were awarded, Lynn found herself on a small podium beside shooters who had competed for years. "Remarkable performance from a newcomer," the announcer commented, handing Lynn her bronze medal. "We'll be watching your career with interest." Afterward, shooters from various clubs approached her with questions and congratulations. Where had she learned? Who was her coach? Would she be interested in joining their team? Lynn directed them all to Howard, who stood quietly at the edge of the gathering. One by one, they realized who he was, the Olympic medalist who had largely disappeared from the competitive shooting world decades ago. "You should be proud," Vance said, appearing beside Lynn as the crowd thinned. "Third place at your first regional is impressive." "Thanks," Lynn replied. "I saw you took first in the advanced division. Congratulations." "Howard's been giving me some pointers," Vance admitted. "Turns out I had some bad habits no one ever corrected." Lynn smiled at this unexpected humility from the man who had dismissed her so thoroughly just months ago. As they were packing up to leave, a woman in an official-looking polo shirt approached. "Excuse me, are you Lin Chen?" Lin nodded. "I'm with the State Shooting Association. Your performance today caught our attention. We have a development program for promising shooters, training, equipment stipends, competition opportunities. Would you be interested?" Lin looked toward Howard, who raised his eyebrows but said nothing, leaving the decision entirely to her. "I'm just a librarian who wanted to learn self-defense," Lin said hesitantly. "And I'm just a program coordinator who recognizes talent," the woman replied with a smile. "Think about it. Here's my card." On the drive home, with her bronze medal sitting on the passenger seat, Lin reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just a few months. From being completely ignored at her first class to standing on a podium at a regional competition, all because one person had seen potential where others saw only a hopeless beginner. "What are you thinking about?" Howard asked from the passenger seat. "How strange life is," Lin replied. "I only wanted to protect myself after those break-ins. I never imagined discovering a talent or competing." Howard nodded. "The best journeys often start with the simplest steps. The question is, what's your next step?" Lin considered this as they drove through the summer evening. "I'm not sure yet, but I know it involves continuing to learn from you if you're willing to keep teaching." "I'm willing," Howard said. "Though soon you'll need more advanced instruction than I can provide." "I doubt that," Lin smiled. "There's something special about learning from someone who truly sees you, who understands how you work and thinks about what you specifically need." They drove in comfortable silence for a while before Howard spoke again. "You know what I'm most proud of? Not just your shooting, impressive as it is. It's what you did with June and even with Vance. You passed on what you learned in a way that helped them improve." "I just showed them what you showed me," Lin said modestly. "And that's the mark of someone who truly understands the ability to teach others." As they pulled into the Blue Ridge parking lot where Howard had left his truck, Lin noticed Dale putting up a new sign by the entrance. It read, "Home of Regional Bronze Medalist Lin Chen." "Looks like you're the new star of Blue Ridge," Howard chuckled. "I prefer being the librarian who surprised everyone," Lin replied. Before getting out, Howard turned to her. "Whatever you decide about that development program, remember why you started. The joy should always be in the learning and improving, not just the winning." Lin nodded, understanding the wisdom in his words. That evening at home, Lin hung her medal on a small hook beside her mirror. Next to it, she placed the target from her very first day at the range, a paper riddled with scattered holes, mostly missing the center circles. The contrast between them told the story of her journey. She thought about the library patrons who came in searching for books on subjects they knew nothing about, hoping to learn something new. How many of them might have hidden talents they'd never discovered? How many had been dismissed or ignored by teachers who couldn't see their potential? Lin picked up her phone and called the number on the card the woman had given her. Whatever came next in her unexpected journey as a markswoman, she knew one thing for certain. She would never again underestimate the power of the right teacher, patient practice, and the courage to continue showing up when no one expects you to succeed.